Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. I hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Here we are back at it again today on this Tuesday. It's a short broadcast week because of the holiday. We'll make the most out of it, my friends. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you being here today, my friends. I want to talk, there's, of course, the routine on a Monday, which is a Tuesday this week because of the holiday, but on a Monday after a weekend, especially a Tuesday after a 3-day weekend, there are plenty of things to get to. So I want to talk about Trump's post on Truth Social about Memorial Day, which reminds me a lot of his post. I think it was an Easter post we talked about here, almost a couple of months ago now, that he posted on Easter. We have the media still out there pretending like they had no idea about Joseph Robinette bribery. And I'll tell you, his condition, his senility, allegedly, his lack of cognition and mental acuity, that he didn't have any of that, didn't have much of that in the White House during his term. They're acting like we're the ones that have created the problem here, not those who are in the media. And this is an important thing. This has to be completely exposed. These jokers and clowns have to be held to account for how much they hid the condition of the former president of the United States. I've got that in the stack of stuff and other things as well. By the way, if you're new to the program, you can always check out what's in the stack of stuff online on our website, toddhuffshow.com. Just go to the stack. That is, of course, a hat tip to the late great Rush Limbaugh. The Pacers, I'll just mention this briefly because some of you don't like me talking about this. Pacers lost a game they should have won on Sunday night, Game 3 in Indianapolis. By the way, the Pacers have started off with this. This is how every series has gone so far for the Pacers. We'll see if it continues to hold the same pattern here tonight when they play Game 4 against the New York Knickerbockers at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So we've got the Pacers now up 2-1. Big game tonight. You definitely don't want to go back to New York tied 2-2. Anyway, that's where we're headed today, my friends. Before we get too far down that path, let's face it, every single dollar we spend is a vote for the kind of America that we want to live in. That's why we launched Freedom Marketplace. It's a directory of free businesses. It's a free directory of businesses, not a directory of free businesses. It's free to you, that's the point. And this is a place where you can go to find businesses that align with your conservative principles, your conservative values. These businesses, by the way, in order to be listed on Freedom Marketplace, have made a promise. They made a promise to you, to me. They're not going to support leftist candidates or causes. If they break that promise, my friends, boom, they are off the directory. But these folks are not going to do that. That's why they are there. And if you're tired of funding the woke agenda by giving your hard-earned dollars to businesses that are pushing for leftist candidates and leftist causes, if you're tired of that scenario, if you're tired of that way of operating, check out Freedom Marketplace. It's free. It's easy. Liberty and business for all, my friends. freedommarketplace.net is that website. Again, freedommarketplace.net. All right. This is very similar to Trump's post from Easter. This is Trump's Memorial Day post. I don't know if this is going to be his new MO for posts over, holiday weekends or whatever, but here's what he posted On Sunday, which of course that was the Indianapolis 500, Memorial Day being yesterday. Memorial Day weekend is when the 500 is run. But no, this was actually yesterday. I'm mistaken. I've got my dates mixed up. Early Memorial Day morning. Happy Memorial Day to all, including the scum that spent the last 4 years. This is all caps. I don't think there's a single letter that's not a capital letter in this thing. Let's see. Let me start over. Happy Memorial Day to all, including the scum that spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our country through warped radical left minds who allowed 21 million, I guess. He wrote the number and wrote million, but I'm just telling you what it says. People to illegally enter our country, many of them being criminals and the mentally insane through an open border that only an incompetent president would approve, and through judges who are on a mission to keep murderers, drug dealers, rapists, gang members, and released prisoners from all over the world in our country so they can rob, murder, and rape again, all protected by these USA-hating judges who suffer from an ideology that is sick and very dangerous for our country. I think that was all one sentence. I did not see a period until there. Could be wrong. Maybe I missed it. The old eyesight isn't what it once was. Hopefully the United States Supreme Court and other good and compassionate judges throughout the land will save us from the decisions of the monsters who want our country to go to hell. Period. That's the second sentence. But fear not, we have made great progress over the last 4 months, and America will soon be safe and great again. Again, happy Memorial Day, and God bless America. This, some people do not like this at all. Happy Memorial Day to all, he writes, including the scum who spent the last 4 years trying to destroy our... it's a lot of stuff that he said, but they don't like this attitude. And listen, I understand this is not... this doesn't fit even every personality. Even someone who can chuckle at this, maybe some of you can, maybe some of you can't, I don't know. But even some who can chuckle at this would never post something like this. But I want to say this, and I understand those who don't like this. This might be one of those examples where they say, look, this is unpresidential, this is unnecessary, this is Memorial Day, why is this, this is the President of the United States, and he's talking about scum as our political opposition. I understand why some people don't like this. I do understand that. But let me say this, I guess, in somewhat defense of this. Friends, we are in the midst of a cold civil war. I know now that we have had Trump in the White House for 4 months or so? Is that right? February, March, April, May, 4 months, a little bit over 4 months. It's easy to forget. It's easy to forget even for those of us who follow this on a regular basis. It's easy to forget just how bad some of the things were that we had to contend with. And it's one thing if what we had to contend with was just, I don't know, just maybe ineptitude. To a point, even... I guess at a point, even ineptitude is something that we just can't deal with because the way this country was run for the previous 4 years before Trump was harming people in tremendous ways, harming the economy, harming the ability of people to engage in free speech in many cases. It was harmful in that it was an open border, as he put in here, letting however many people across our border illegally. Some people, of course, suffered physically, suffered as victims of crimes to those who were not even supposed to be here. I think that we had a government operating that was basically involved in all sorts of corruption and all sorts of just terrible behavior. I mean, we found some of this out through Doge. We found some of this out years ago through the Hunter Biden laptop. We had a media who was complicit in this. We'll get more into that as the program comes together. They're still out there pretending they had no idea that Biden was not fit for office, and they still won't even admit what the real lack of fitness was the result of. They act as though it's simply about his age or some such thing, when in reality it was about incompetence, when in reality it was about something that, yes, many people who are elderly or some people as they age have some of these problems. It's not his age that was the problem. His problem was that he had conditions, mental conditions, or a condition that led to severe mental decline, physical decline as well, during his time in the White House. And we had a media that pretended like that was okay, like there was no problem. I mean, you go back in our memory bank here and you think about some of the things that happened on this man's watch, President Joseph Robinette bribery, and it was, I mean, unbelievable. From the open border to the out-of-control inflation to the government. Remember when the government was threatening and trying to bully people into getting a vaccine? By the way, a vaccine that as time goes by is proving to be more and more unhealthy from studies that those of us on this side of the argument had been at least mentioning some of these concerns over time. You weren't allowed to say these things. I remember when Biden had basically told the American people he'd had enough. He'd had enough from the unvaccinated crowd. He was sick of the unvaccinated crowd causing harm on the folks who were vaccinated and trying to be good American citizens. Do you remember this? Early in his presidency, he was fed up with it, trying to intimidate people. Doesn't work for people like me and many of you, but for some people it worked. And it's easy in hindsight to put that behind us. Listen, I'm not about retribution. Some people are. Some people want to get even. I don't want to get even. What I want is for there to be, I want there to be justice. What I want is for the situation that was present during the last administration, I want whatever it was that allowed these bad things to happen. I want whatever it was that created the scenario whereby we had an out-of-control government to exist, and we were basically crossing our fingers hoping that it wouldn't get more powerful or target us in more specific ways. We wanted whatever it was that led to that. That needs to be exposed. That needs to be dismantled. That needs to be completely and utterly done away with. That's why this matters. And so when Trump writes these words, while I can certainly understand those who don't like them, calling your political opposition scum and all of that, I understand that. And I'm not saying you're wrong, but I also think it's important to note that we are in the midst of a cold civil war. I've said this on this program for years now. I don't even know how long ago I first said this, but it's been a long time. This program is almost 10 years old. We'll be celebrating our 10th birthday, 10th anniversary on August the 15th when we started podcasting in a bedroom closet. This program has changed and grown and reached more people and all that stuff over the course of time. But when I started in the early days, it wasn't long before I started referring to what we're dealing with as a cold civil war. And of course, by cold civil war, I was referencing the Cold War, an ideological war between the United States and the Soviet Union from basically the end of World War I until the communist empire collapsed in the 1990s. And it's similar in this sense. There's certainly differences, right? I mean, We're talking about something that's domestic. There are not two world superpowers at play here. This is something that's inside this nation. This is a civil war, if you will, a battle between a group of people from within one nation. This is cold in the sense that it's not a hot war. There's not shots, thankfully, flying through the air, that sort of stuff, just like there wasn't during the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Instead, what was happening was there was a battle of ideologies. There was a battle of narratives, a battle of values, a battle of which system is better. That's what's happening here in our country today. There are two diametrically opposed worldviews that have been on the ballot in this great nation for the past several election cycles. You have the morally bankrupt worldview of the radical left, which wants bigger government, which wants less liberty, which wants more control, higher taxes, less opportunity. That's not how they see it, but at least less opportunity and choices for you. They want bigger them and smaller you. They want to basically redefine reality and truth as it exists in the world today. These are the folks who are pushing for these extreme agendas and items and just crazy things with the trans agenda in particular. They want open borders. They want a communist empire is what they want. They don't want there to be free. They hate free markets. They hate capitalism. This is what they want. And then you have the side that wants this nation to return to her historical roots. They want her to return to the Constitution. Now, certainly there are people in between this point that I'm speaking about now and the radical left's worldview. There are people that are dotted all across the political continuum here today, people wanting different things. But suffice it to say that you either want people that want to grow the government and thereby grow their power, authority, riches, wealth, all that sort of stuff, or you have people who want to engage in a society that's founded as the Constitution laid out. Liberty, opportunity, rights of the individuals, right? That's what's at stake here. And so when you see it through that lens, and if you see the people who pursue this larger government, if you see them for who they are, it is, whether you want to personally call them scum or not, I understand some people have a problem with that. I'm not going to fight that battle or make the case. But what I am saying is that their ideas are incredibly dangerous. Their ideas are awful. Their ideas are oppressive. Their ideas are the antithesis of what it means to be a free citizen. Their ideas are very, very dangerous to this country in lots of ways. And Trump laid out some of these ways. And so if they're embracing these ideas, Memorial Day or Easter or whatever, we have to remain vigilant as to what we're fighting against. And I think that's, to me, as I read this message, of course I thought, man, Trump, coming right at him again. But the reality is that we have to be reminded that this is really what this battle is about. It's so easy. It's so easy and so dangerous to be in political power and then to return to that state of complacency where we realize that the people who are in the political opposition, or we stop realizing the threat that they pose to this great nation. And we suddenly want to tone it down. And I'm not saying that I like this message. I'm simply saying that there's something underneath this that I agree with in its entirety. The people who are on the other side of this argument need to be defeated completely, soundly defeated. They need to be defeated so obviously and so clearly that they never set foot in the political arena again. They need to be exposed for the damage they've done. They need to be exposed for the dangerous ideology, and the dangerous ideas that they hold. They need to be held accountable for the things that they have unleashed on the American people. Trump laid some of these things out. 21 million people, whatever the number of people is, it's tens of millions now that have crossed our southern border illegally. Many of those folks are a small percentage, but it adds up significantly when you have that many people. So many of those folks have created havoc on the lives of average Americans. Some of those people in that number of 21 million have raped, have murdered, have become gang members, drug dealers. Some of these folks were prisoners that were released from other countries all over the world, just as Trump wrote here, so that they can rob and murder and rape again. And there's judges that have protected this. Trump is trying to fix this problem. There are judges and politicians who have stood in the way of this problem being dealt with. This is life or death for many people who are not here today because of the previous administration's lack of concern about securing the border. There are games that they played to lie to the American people, saying that they needed an act of Congress in order to secure our southern border. And now Trump, who's trying to deport those who are here illegally, by the way, who are getting, by the way, their appropriate version of due process as it pertains to being deported from a country of which you are not a part of, you're not supposed to be in. These folks are not being denied that. They're being denied the same level of due process that an American would have if he or she was charged with a crime and facing prison time. By the way, these folks, if they were facing those consequences, would get the same level of due process. But again, that requires context. That requires an understanding of the nuance and what exactly is going on here. The media could not care less about that. So Trump comes out and just lights it on fire, as he is going to do for the rest of this term. This is how this is going to be. And while I can understand just kind of wanting to return to a time when we could just be pleasant on Memorial Day when a president didn't say these sorts of things, I also can understand completely because our biggest concern is becoming complacent and refusing to realize really and truthfully what we're up against here. We're up against some bad things. Quick timeouts in order, my friends. I'll continue this conversation on the other side of the break. You're listening to the home of conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I think that of all of the things to talk about when you think about what we're dealing with in this country, I think one of the things that should be at the top of the list, and it doesn't really get the level of attention that it should. It's easy to chase the rabbits and the storylines and the narrative. Look at what the left's doing. Look at how they're defending this, denying that, all of those sorts of things. Complacency on behalf of the American people is one of the things that I think is a fundamental cause of the problems we're facing today. So one of the reasons, and I get some people on social media or hear from people who don't agree with me on this, but it's one of the reasons why when it comes to the issue of term limits, listen, I'm fine with term limits. What I'm not fine with is thinking that that's really going to solve our problem, because our problem is not just that we have politicians in office too long. I certainly don't like it. It leads to problems, but that is really a symptom, I believe. It's not the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is that we have a complacent, I don't mean you, I just mean at large in this country. We have had complacency. We have been lulled to sleep. When things are good, you've seen that circle, right? That strong men create good times. They may not be exactly the phrase, but strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. And it just cycles. And there is so much truth to that scenario, to that statement, or to that cycle, whatever you want to call this. There's a lot of truth that we can take from that and apply to our lives. When things are good, it creates complacency. We're not as strong and as, we just aren't what we should be. And that complacency or that weakness, whatever you want to call it, then creates tough times, because we didn't demand, in this case, that our government do what it's supposed to do and nothing more. We didn't demand that our government be held accountable, that these politicians be held accountable. And then because of the lack of accountability, which comes from a lack of strong people. By the way, struggle is I know, as one who has certainly had my fair of struggle and difficulty, I know that struggle, we all want relief from the struggle. We do. And I understand that. As a human being, I 100% understand that. Just as it's very similar to just wanting there to be different politicians. Like we just want relief or some, we need something that's measurable. But the reality is that those struggles are what develop the muscles that are required to make sure that we're not taken advantage of, that we can hold these clowns accountable. And prosperity is a wonderful thing. I mean, the standard of living is so high. We're so materially blessed, and that is a good thing. But when we seek the material blessing more than the character development, more than the lessons that come from the difficult times, bad things are going to happen. I'm going through this study through the Bible, which I've talked about on this program many times. And it's interesting to me how it kind of corresponds from time to time where I am in the study with what I'm talking about on the show. Going through the book of Romans right now, which is quite possibly, I'm always careful to say this, but one of my favorite books, how about that, of the Bible. So much theology, so much explanation. Paul's trying to explain to the church at Rome. He's trying to tie up, there's a gap. There's a gap in the minds of the folks that are there in Rome, the early church. A lot of them don't have the history. They don't know the Old Testament scriptures because they're not Jewish. And they misunderstand a lot of things. And so Paul goes to great lengths to kind of tie up some loose ends and connect some dots for people that they may not or were not apparently understanding at the time. And so he gets into some very interesting conversations. But one of the things that these early churches were often experiencing was that they were worshiping something that was created more than the creator himself. And this is a form of idolatry where you say, hey, I like prosperity. There's nothing wrong with prosperity. Prosperity can be a blessing from God. But to seek the gift and not the giver of the gift is a form of idolatry. And dare I say that that's something that we have been experiencing in this nation, even within the church herself. We want the good things, but we should be seeking the source of the good thing. We should be seeking above all to know and to be in relationship with Him, not just get the goodies, right? It's like if you have grandparents love to dote on their grandchildren and give stuff and all this, just be generous. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's certainly a temptation amongst some grandchildren. Perhaps you could relate to this when you were younger, where you liked the birthday money in the birthday card, which again, there's nothing wrong with liking that, but there wasn't a real relationship, to be had there. And so I feel like what's happened to this country, in another way of speaking, is that we have focused on all the things that we have been blessed with materially, and we've not really paid much attention to our role in making sure that these things stay as they are. There is no guarantee, as Reagan said. Freedom is only one generation away from extinction. And so if we become disengaged, if we become apathetic and complacent, then what has happened in this country is bound to happen. And we fell asleep at the wheel. I don't know exactly when, but I would say in a large respect, this country has been metaphorically asleep at the wheel for my entire life. More and more people are awakening, not becoming woke, but truly are awakening to the fact that they have been in a slumber and they are trying to address this problem. But we are dealing with some really evil and dark forces. But an engaged people is the solution to our problems. An engaged people and a people, by the way, I still think that at the core of our problem, we are dealing. We're a nation and much in need of a spiritual reawakening, of a revival, of a return to the God of the Bible, a repentance, a spiritual awakening. I believe that that's at the core of our problem as well. So there's lots of things that are kind of working against us that have led us to this point. And so now we're at a point where we're starting to candidly reverse some of these things. And it's important that we continue to do this, that we continue to put the pedal to the metal while at the same time understanding that there's a lot more depth to this, a lot more, maybe many more reasons for this than we first bargained for. It's not just who the politicians are in Washington, D.C. That's a big part of it. But it's also, are we holding them accountable? Are we pursuing the sorts of things we should be pursuing? And these are questions I think that we should be asking ourselves, because this is a cold civil war. We're fighting for supremacy of one ideology to rule in this country. One of these ideologies has to win, and it better be the one that embraces the Constitution, embraces liberty, celebrates freedom and opportunity and free markets, not the one that wants bigger government, more control, less liberty, and wokeness being forced down the throats of the American people. So that's all I care to say about that, my friends. If you want to see Trump's post on Truth Social, you can Google it. It's also on our website on today's stack of stuff. I want to remind you, though, friends, we have launched Red, White, and Brand, which helps you put your logo on almost anything. I'm talking apparel, hats, T-shirts, polos, sweatshirts, jackets, you name it. For being able to get some of the most well-known high-end brands to getting some of the more affordable, lesser-known brands, Red, White, and Brand is here to help you with your company's or your group's apparel needs. If you're interested, you can get a 10% discount. If you text the word Todd to 317-210-2830. Again, 317-210-2830. Red, White, and Brand, my friends, your logo on almost anything. Quick timeout. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I want to shift gears a little bit here, but there's a story that I kind of want to touch on before I move on to what I want to talk about next, which is, again, the media's just completely dishonest covering, not just of the Biden administration, but now in retrospect, in hindsight, how they covered the Biden administration. They want us to believe that we just don't understand how journalism works. I want to get into that next hour, but I want to start here with this little story in between. This happened over the Memorial Day weekend. Antifa violently attacked a Christian worship service, and then the story gets so much worse. This is written by Bonchi at Red State. I'm going to get through as much of this as I can. I might talk about this at the top of the hour as well. A Christian worship service was violently attacked by Antifa and other pro-transgender individuals in, you guessed it, Seattle on Saturday. Police had to intervene, leading to several arrests as black-clad and masked counter-protesters tried to tear down fencing and rush the event. Others exposed themselves publicly, as completely normal and totally adjusted people do. So you had a Christian worship service. You had pro-trans individuals in Seattle not like it. They showed up, at least some of them, in black clothes, and they were masked. They tried to tear down the fencing of an event that was being held in a completely legal and free manner. They stormed the event. Some of these folks, as they're storming the event, decide to expose themselves publicly, which of course is very, very reasonable and rational. Here's a bit of the chaos, Bonchi writes, that ensued, including scenes of police pinning Antifa members to the ground to stop their advance. There's a video of this, these lunatics. One of the pastors behind the event gave some commentary on their motives, though I'll note that's irrelevant when talking about the free exercise of religion and speech. Christians have just as much of a right to exist in public as anyone waving a transgender flag while shouting obscenities at people they disagree with. That right there, those are can be construed as fighting words from the unhinged or by the unhinged radical left. Here's what a reporter asked the pastor: "What do you want to say to the rest of the country watching this nationally? A lot of people don't believe this kind of far-left violence and militant behavior is happening in a place like Seattle." The pastor says this: "I think it's because of the silence of the church." Oh, this will preach. Preach this, pastor. "So my message," he said, "to the rest of the country is we've got to stop being silent. Stop being inside the four walls of the church. Step outside the four walls of the church and bring the love of Jesus Christ to the most dark places we see." Are you ready for the story to get worse, Bonchi writes? Because it's about to get much worse. Not only did the Christians involved have to deal with hateful, violent attacks from masked lunatics, but the mayor of Seattle promptly came out and condemned, yes, of course you knew this, my friends, the Christians. Mayor Bruce Harrell released the following statement, labeling the worship as an extreme right-wing rally, and threw his support behind the counter-protesters who fought with and allegedly injured police officers. So, I mean, it's predictable. I can't say any of this is shocking, but it's still shocking to see that this is the result, by the way, of moral depravity. This is what it means to be handed over to your depraved mind. This is what the statement from the mayor of Seattle wrote this. "Seattle is proud of our reputation as a welcoming, inclusive city for the LGBTQ plus communities, and we stand with our trans neighbors when they face bigotry and injustice. Today's far-right rally was held here for this very reason, to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood. To provoke a reaction, to tell people that their sin is sin." I've read about this before. When the humanity of trans people and those who have been historically marginalized is questioned, we triumph by demonstrating our values through our words and peaceful protest. We lose our voice when this is disrupted by violence, chaos, and confusion. This is sick, candidly. By the way, to say that a Christian, now listen, I know that there are people who abuse this. I can't even speak for this, other than what I know, which seems to be totally legitimate and genuine what this pastor's doing. I could be wrong. I can't speak on. who knows? But it seems completely legitimate to me and genuine and sincere. Christians who go in and preach God's word to whatever group of people that are embracing and openly calling for sinful behavior. When you do that, you're not calling into question the humanity of people. That's not what's happening at all. That's what they want this story to become, that what they want it to sound like and make it look like is happening here. You see, that Christian, that pastor, that church has a message for the people there. In fact, that they're loved by their Creator, and that Creator wants them to turn from their sins and embrace Him and follow Him. That's, my friend, not a lack of humanity. I gotta go. SDG.